Hey Eric, great to catch up with you again. How's your day been?
Yeah, not too bad, thanks, Andrew. Usual sort of busy day, doing a bit of client work, doing a bit of personal work, and a bit of chill time as well.
Brilliant. Well, look, I wanted to bring you on to a call today because I wanted to discuss an important topic, which I know you've got a lot of insight into, which you can deliver, and I think that I could be selfish and just ask for you to deliver that to me myself. But I thought, hey, let's widen this out so that more coaches can learn from two older boys, not older boys in the industry.
Yeah,
But before we do that, I think, well, the topic, first of all, is going to be how to price high ticket personal training without feeling pushy.
yeah.
But before I ask you the first question, for those people that perhaps do not know who Erak Simmson is, let me just to give them a little bit of an overview. So today's guest is Erak Simmson, as I say. He's a coach, he's a mentor, and he is an award-winning personal trainer. So he's not only got good looks beyond me, but he's also award-winning as
Uh,
well, which I can't quite say myself.
uh,
But as I have, he's got over a decade or more of experience in fat loss transformation,
yeah.
which I feel is inspiring. And that's both delivered offline and online. What I feel is really relevant to is he's the creator of the one-day implementation accelerator workshop, which I found to be inspiring and significantly beneficial these days. It helps PTs design and sell high-ticket weight loss programs. But what I particularly like about it, it's not one of these events you rock up to, sit back, take some notes, enjoy the session, go home and put your notes to one side to be forgotten about. No, what happens is Eric realizes that implementation is key to success. So you're working through that session into getting your program into play. And then when it's ready, you're hitting play, hitting go before where you go, which I think is fantastic. Eric has led masterminds for health business owners, some earning over £1 million, and has built teams across multiple training locations. He's known for turning tough times into success. Hey, we've all had tough times, but those include bouncing back after the 2008 crash, for those who remember how stressful that was, the Novichok incident in Salisbury, which was horrific. And of course, that dreaded C word 5 years ago, the pandemic. So please welcome a true industry expert, a person I trust immensely, and a person who's has significant insights into successful personal trainer business growth. Welcome to the session today, Eric.
Andrew, thank you for such a great introduction. And as ever, hopefully I can live up to your listeners' expectations and deliver some practical value. Because I know these sessions sometimes, yeah, I'm guilty of it sometimes, maybe a bit too much theory, but hopefully I can give them some real practical things, or at least some mindset shifts as well around the topic.
I love that. And you hit upon a great point straight off there, the practicality of them. It's good to talk tactics and theory and things, which, yes, we can learn and grow from that.
Yeah,
But I find personally myself is that if there's practical takeaway points that I can work with immediately, then hey, even more so, more value in that.
sure.
Perfect. Well, hey, let's start off. The first question I've got is why do personal trainers struggle with pricing, in your opinion?
Okay, in particular, pricing the high ticket offers as well, but any offer, I think, any personal training offer. And I want to kick off this. I've got three key points I want to talk about, but before I get into those 3 points, I think it's worth mentioning what I have seen happening in the personal training space over the last decade or more now, definitely over the last decade, and maybe a little bit before then. And that is, there's been a real deluge of coaches, mentors coming into our space, teaching personal trainers how to do high ticket. And you may have seen that and experienced
I
that
have.
yourself.
Yeah, I have.
Yeah, it's about earn 10K, it's about six figures, it's about scaling. And when I started out as a personal trainer way back when, it really wasn't about that. For me, it was about I want to do something that I enjoy, something that gives me, I wake up in the morning thinking, yeah, I want to get out and do this. It's something, I want to help people. And, I want to make a living out of it as well. So I wasn't shy from the money side of it, but I wasn't thinking 10K a month, 100K, six figures scaling. That wasn't really, and maybe that's the fault of mine. Maybe I should have been more ambitious. I don't know, but that wasn't my thinking. But I think what's happened is, and I'll get to the three key points in a moment, but I think this is worth mentioning. People have come into our space, and I'm going to put these into two categories of the types of mentors that are out there. And neither of these types of mentors are wrong.
Hmm.
You've got dolphins, you've got sharks. And
Okay.
if I just left it at that and said, oh, just sharks, you'd think, oh, dodgy person. But no, sharks do what sharks do, and dolphins do what dolphins do. And I am more like a dolphin, I think, is how I describe my approach to sales and marketing. And the people I work with are probably not too dissimilar to that either. So that's how I see myself. If I was to pick someone that lives in the sea, I'm more of a dolphin. And my clients are a bit more like that. So if I'm speaking to another dolphin, it's easy to communicate with them. We're on the same wavelength. Equally, if I were a shark and my clients were like sharks, we would communicate nicely because we're both speaking shark language. But I think what's happened is we've got people coming in as sharks into the dolphin space, trying to get dolphins to behave like sharks. And it's not congruent with how we operate as personal trainers because most personal trainers that I know, they really value service, helping people, and they're a little bit reluctant, and we're going to get onto it, of making the sale, asking for the money. Hence the title of this topic today, not feeling pushy. So I think we need to understand that if you are a dolphin, you can behave like a dolphin. You don't have to behave like a shark. You don't have to use pushy sales tactics. You don't have to get people on the phone call and say things like, or have in your head, they're going to buy, they're going to put a deposit down, or they're a no. I'm not going to allow them to think about anything because if they've got an objection, I'm going to deal with that objection on this phone call right here and now. That's how a shark would behave. And
Yeah.
again, if you're dealing with a shark type of client, they'd probably enjoy that. They'd like it. They'd be, yeah, okay, fine. I'll make a decision. But if you're dealing with a dolphin, but you're behaving like a shark or asked to behave like a shark, you can see how mentally that's not really congruent. Does that make
Hmm.
sense?
It makes total sense to me. I'll come back to some points I've noted down on that.
Okay.
But
So,
no, it makes a lot
yeah.
of sense.
But to answer your question specifically, why do personal trainers struggle with pricing? Three things I've got down here. First of all, is fear of rejection. People are just scared. Somebody's going to say no to my offer. They're just scared that they're asking for money and someone's going to say
Hmm.
no. And I think that's where you need to shift your mind to they're not rejecting you. This is how I position it in my head. I don't tell them this, but it's how I position it in my head and think about it. They are rejecting the opportunity to get a result they want. And that's fine. People are entitled to say, no, thanks. So don't take it personally. I know that's easier said than maybe done because it's you they're speaking to. But if you can position it in your head that they're rejecting the opportunity, that's a great starting point in terms of your mentality and being able
Hmm.
to ask. The other thing that trainers do, and I've done this myself, and that's to compare with other trainers what they're doing, make the comparison and feel as though maybe I'm charging too much. Maybe I can't ask for that much money. Maybe I'm just new to the game and they've been doing this for like 5, 10, 15 years and they're only charging this much and I want to charge that much. Oh, the comparison game. I just don't compare. Just don't compare with other people. I'm not saying don't be sensitive to the market, what's out there. You have to be
Good point.
sensitive to the market,
You
but
need to be aware. You need to
yeah,
be aware of pricing, but I
absolutely,
agree with you.
absolutely.
I agree.
But doing a direct comparison, what's that trainer charging? What's that one charging? What's that one? You don't want to be doing that. And then
Who's to say that they're even charging the relevant price for their services?
exactly, exactly. So there's one thing, but two things in one. The second one is lack of confidence in the value that they offer. So you've got an offer that you truly believe in, and you think this is a bloody good offer. This I've thought it through. I've thought through the steps for the client. I've thought about the mental obstacles they might have to or will come up against. I've thought about how to overcome, or the questions I could ask them, or the suggestions I could make. I've thought about their nutritional challenges. I've thought about how they're going to plan their meals. I've thought about what they do for weekends. I've thought about holidays. I've thought about unexpected visits. I've thought about if they plateau or they overeat. I've really thought this through. I've thought through their exercise programming, if they're away on holiday, if they can't get to the gym. I've really thought this through. And if you've gone to that level of detail, and I'm not saying you do this overnight, you probably wouldn't. It takes time.
It does.
It's experience. But once you've thought that through, then I think that removes a lot of the lack of confidence that people maybe have, because you can stand there with utmost confidence that, you know what, I've really thought this through. And the final thing that makes people struggle with their pricing is underestimating the value of a transformation. For you and me as fitness trainers and people listening to this, maybe fitness has become, it's very easy for them. It's simple.
Mm-hmm.
You know, going to the gym, eating well, remaining in relatively good shape. It's simple. We've done it all their lives. But the people they're potentially working with or are working with, maybe they've never, ever, ever been fit in their lives. Maybe they were the kid that wasn't picked for the school football team or netball team. Maybe they were the young teenager that always wrapped up in clothing, didn't show their arms and their legs. I had one client that said to me when she went shopping for clothes, as long as it came down to her wrists and her ankles and it was black, that was good enough for me. Maybe the person that ducks out of social events all the time because they're so self-conscious. Maybe they're the person that hasn't got a partner or is fearful of losing the partner because they're not happy with their body image. But we've never had that, but they have.
Mm-hmm.
So we underestimate just how important that and once we get our heads around understanding that this is a big deal for people, suddenly, and providing they're the right person, and what I'm about to say, I don't mean to be disrespectful to other people, but they're in the right sort of income bracket, as it were. We may touch on this later, and they want to make this transformation. Suddenly, your pricing becomes, I won't say irrelevant, it's still got to be price sensitive, but I think it removes a lot of this struggling with pricing when you start to focus in on those three things I've just mentioned.
I think so. And as you say, they start seeing it as an investment in their health and wellness as opposed to an expense and that as well, where particularly when you've outlined exactly what you're delivering and the milestones that they'll be taking in relation to the program that you offer. Um, a thing that you mentioned earlier, which I feel is something that became relevant to me back in the day when I was comparing my pricing. And I did the same thing where I was looking at what everybody else was charging and thinking, oh, they've been in the industry, basing it on their experience, they're charging this, so I should really charge that. Uh, I changed my thought process and to think, because I'm like you, I'm sure I'm a dolphin. Well, I am a dolphin as opposed
Yeah.
to a shark. I feel that the compensation we receive in payment is in relation to the service and transformation we deliver to our clients. You know, if we focus on being the best that we possibly can each and every interaction we have with our clients, then forget about earning 10K a month or whatever. You will get rewarded appropriately in terms of the money that you receive for that, and that's how I play things forward. Um, I've also I've been involved. God, I used to be a coach for a particular education provider where we would take uh, fitness professionals through a sales process, and it was that pushing them into an area that they're uncomfortable with, and it never sat well with me in that approach. It's that shark approach, and
Mm.
as you say, it's delivering a shark product into a dolphin market, which there was always that
Mm.
butting of heads. So with that, That never sat with me. I much prefer the approach that doctors, physios, massage therapists, and that like take. They've got people coming to them in pain. They'll ask them a series of questions,
Yeah.
which they're then able to prescribe the perfect remedy, the perfect solution to them,
Yeah.
and then say, to do that, this is the investment for that. That's the approach I've taken most of my life as a fitness professional and as a business coach.
Yeah.
In that, hey, these are the options available. Which one do you feel is best for you? And if we do that approach, it's not really selling. It's it's prescribing more so. But no, I think they were good points that you made. That leads us into the next question of how do you price high ticket without being salesy, as you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, yeah. And again, it kind of naturally dovetails in from the previous question, really, and that is,
Yeah, I think it does. Yeah.
so the challenge with selling anything is people go on to it, and it depends how you set up your client journey. So let's just backtrack for a second.
Okay.
I'll just talk about how I do it so I eliminate that feeling of feeling pushy on a sales call. I start off with, obviously my marketing goes out there on, organic, typically videos. People listen to that and they decide whether or not they know, like, and trust me. It might be a lead magnet they sign up for, they get a bit more information. And then I invite them onto an initial sales call, which will take no more than 10 minutes or so. Simple call, they book on, time that they want to book on and a date, jump on, usual chit chat, where you from, what you're doing, blah, blah, blah. Explain to them how the call is going to work. That's important
Yeah.
because he who asks the questions is in control of the conversation. What you don't want to be doing is just answering lots of questions. So some simple questions, having done all the pleasantries, what they're looking to do, have they got any time frames, any sort of particular injuries, that sort of thing. And then outlining how my program works, what the expected outcomes are, and what the investment levels are from this range to that range. And then any questions that they may have, and does what I've just described sound like, basically, how does that sound to you? And
Yeah.
if they go, you
Okay.
know what, that sounds like a good program, and yeah, I think I could invest in that. That's step number one. So we've now got consent. I've asked some questions. I've established if I can help them. I think I can. If I can't, I'll tell them. I've told them a bit about the program, and it's very top line stuff. This, by the way, it's not detail. And then
Hmm.
I've said, and the investment is this, and then I shut up. What would they like to do? And then it's up to them to make a decision if they want to go to the next step. And the next step is an in-depth. When I was doing this offline, it was a face-to-face meeting.
Yeah.
And that
Okay.
face-to-face meeting, more questions, more information, getting the buy-in, find out what they're about, and then presenting a solution. And you mentioned doctors, physios. This is what they do. They diagnose, and that's essentially what I was doing and my team were doing. I would say, look, based on what you've told us, this is what we think is your next best step going forwards. And we kept it as simple as that. And during that whole process, what we're doing is we're focusing on the transformation all the time. We're not focusing on the features. We might mention a feature, but mention the benefit to go with it. But the focus is very much on what's the transformation going to be? What's the outcome going to be? And then once you've done all of that and you've presented it, and you've presented, to the client, well, look, based on what you've told me today, Andrea or Andrew, or whoever I'm speaking to,
I've been called worse than
yeah, yeah,
Andrea.
yeah. But based on what you've said, my recommendation is you should be doing our Kickstart program, and I've showed them visually, and the investment for that is this per month. And once I've done that, shut up. Now,
Hmm.
here's where it's interesting, I think. If you've done your process well, there are very, very few questions you need to answer at the end of that. The sort of questions should be more like, when can I start?
Okay.
It might be, what happens if I miss a session? And you've got your terms and conditions to cover that.
Okay.
What if I go on holiday? Those sorts of questions. If they have other questions, answer them. If they say, can I go away and think about it? Now, this is where sharks and dolphins differ, I think. I would
Hmm.
say, absolutely, absolutely go away and think about it. a shark would say, and I know that I get hauled over the coals by some coaches for this, they would say, uh, just want to go back over the notes here, Andrea, and you said this was really important for you for these reasons, and you said if you didn't achieve this, it would mean this, this, and this, and if you didn't get the goal, you'd feel that, and we try and almost guilt trip them in a way. And you said you could afford it. You said you could invest. I think that is personally horrible. I think it's horrible. If they want to purchase there and then, they will. If they want to go and think about it, think about if you go to buy a car for 5 grand, 10 grand, whatever, you at least get to test drive it. You haven't got to make a decision there and then. If it's good
Yeah.
enough, you want to go and think about it. Yeah, go and think about it. And that's what I used to do. And that's what I said to my team. Allow them time to go away and think about it. So if you follow the things I've just described and rewind and listen again, I don't think you'll ever feel pushy because what you're ultimately doing is you're allowing the client to make an informed decision. And that's the key point. You're allowing the
Exactly.
client to make an informed decision based on what they've told you, what you understand about their goals, what your program is, and the prescription you've made based on what you can deliver. Let them make an informed decision.
Love it, love it. I think you've hit some key elements there, and I'm smiling throughout as you described that, particularly the shark progress, because I had to deliver that as a coach as a sales program, and that exact framework is what you're outlining. It never sat well with me because it just didn't feel right. I've found much more success in my own business by allowing them to go away, and I feel that, or certainly I found that when I had prospects coming to me to sit down in that consultation, if I've done a good enough job in the content I've put out there initially, and that I've been clear in that initial 10-minute session ahead of the consultation, then when they're sitting in front of me, they've already almost made the decision that they're going to sign up. It's just dotting the I's and crossing the T's.
Exactly. Yeah.
And if you stop pushing them, then you are repelling them away. If you're start going into, well, hey, you've told me you've got the money and blah blah blah. So no, I love the approach you're taking there. One thing that you did bring up, or two things actually. Firstly, you mentioned the 10-minute initial session with them,
Yeah.
and then the longer consultation. 99.9% I know the answer, but I want to make sure everybody's clear. Are you ring fencing your time? Is there a reason why the two defined sessions, two separate sessions?
Yeah, there are, and you've pretty much hit the nail on the head there. Ring fencing your time because I have been in situ. I mean, I did a. I'll give you an example. I was working with a trainer, and we were going through initial consultations. I said, "Okay, I'm going to role play this." So I was the client ringing up, and she was a trainer. And just to make the point of how trainers need to understand this process, we were on that initial call for something like 30 plus minutes. And I allowed it to go on. I was just asking a question. I was like, okay, what's the diet plan? What's the exercise plan? What if I've got a bad back? What? I was just chucking in these random questions. And she was answering them all quite happily.
Uh-huh.
Now, that doesn't help anybody. It helps nobody. It doesn't help the client because the client, they've got the problem. They don't know what the solution is. That's why they're on the phone.
Hmm.
You have got a solution. It may not be the right solution, but in order to find out if it is the right solution, you have to be asking the questions. And if you're not asking the questions, you could be on that phone like this trainer was for half an hour plus. And if you're doing that several times a week on the phone or face to face, and then the person ends with the typical, I'll get back to you, that's only going to happen half a dozen times or maybe even less. And you start to lose confidence in your ability to be able to get clients on board. But when you have that 10 minutes and you've got your defined questions, if at the end of that process they say, A, you feel like you can help them and you feel like you get on with them, well, that's important as well because you can be with them for a long time. They like the sound of your program. They are happy with the investment level. They're happy to come in and speak to you face to face. You now know that person coming in for that 40-minute session, and as you rightly say, they're probably 80-90% already sold on your solution. And that's what we found. Our conversion was like 80 to 90% when people came in to see us on the back of that 10-minute call. So what we weren't
Excellent.
doing was getting people to come in and just sit down, having never spoken to us before, and trying to do both those things in one conversation. Because on the one hand, you're trying to define, can you help them? You're trying to explain the program, you're trying to give them the price point, and then you're trying to ask more questions and make a recommendation, but doing it the way I've described, it acts like a filter. You only get the people sat in front of you, or as I do it now on Zoom, and I do this with trainers as well, you only give up your valuable time to people who have met the criteria that you think you can help. And I think that's not being cocky, that's not being horrible, that's just being, and I just want to make another point, and that is what other trainers will do, and I've seen this done, it's more of a shark approach, I think. They will ask them a lot of personal questions. And I understand why they do it. They're basically saying, if you say no to any of these, you're not a good fit for me. If you say yes to all of these, and then you get on a call and you don't buy, you must be an idiot because you've said yes to all these
Yeah.
things. Again, I'd rather get on the phone, quick chat, get some rapport, and I won't repeat myself, but go through that process and then get them in front of you for 40 minutes or more.
I think it professionalizes the approach you take as well. That the prospect, they're not a client at this stage, they can see that you've got experience, you've got confidence in what you deliver, and there's because you've already outlined, there's a process they have to follow. So they are. It's almost like X Factor. They are. It's moved from you having to audition your services to them. They're auditioning to try and get onto your show, into your program, which I think is good.
You don't sound desperate. It's like,
No,
okay, you've had a 10-minute chat today. I can fit you in for my next call because I've got this all scheduled out. I can see you or get you on a call next Tuesday or tomorrow at 6 or whatever it might be.
perfect. Love it.
Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense. Okay, cool. I've got another question. It's how can a personal trainer figure out what to charge? I think this is an important question because it was a challenge. I'm sure you had it as well. When I first started out, we touched on this earlier, where we're looking at what our perceived competition is doing as well,
Yes,
and
yes.
trying to price in line with what they're charging. So how can somebody listening to this call figure out, if they haven't already, what they should be charging?
Sure. Okay. And again, I've got 3 points I want to make here, but before I make those points, this is how I started. I left the military after a 22-year career, and I was earning a
Okay.
certain amount of money and I had a certain lifestyle. And I wanted to work in the PT business, and that meant I had to be earning similar, maybe not exactly the same, but very similar to maintain the lifestyle, to pay the mortgage, to do the holidays, pension, car, all the things that typically we have to spend on a monthly basis. And so that was my initial figure. Right.
Hmm.
Can I earn the same as or what I was earning before? That's how I did it. I know that some people get sucked into earn 10K a month and blah blah blah, but the reality is most personal trainers, I think Future Fit, who you train with, they've got some stats out there. And I think the top end that they quote is something like 60 or 75K a year. I think that's the top end. That
Yeah.
I'm not saying you can't earn more than that. I mean, at my peak, we were earning significantly more than that. So it's possible, but that wasn't just by myself. That was with a team. Okay, so that wasn't just
Hmm.
Erak Simmson earning that. And again, there'll be trainers out there that will say you can earn 75, 100K by yourself. I get that, but based on Future Fit, it's about 65K the top end, and then it drops down to like 25K, whatever. So for me, it was about, can I earn what I was earning in the military? That's how I started. Then I went from that to thinking, okay, can I earn more? And then can I earn more doing less? And that's how I kind of worked it out to begin with. I didn't get too um, scientific about it, but once I had that figure, it was then a simple case of how many hours do I want to work a week? So I know what my lifestyle is. How many hours do I want to work a week? I had a young son. I want to coach him at tennis, which I did for 6 years, pretty much full time. So I just said, right, I need to earn this much money, divide it by this many hours. Therefore, I need this many clients.
Hmm.
And that's how I did it. It was nothing more scientific than simply doing that. Um, and obviously, obviously, I'm just looking at my notes here. I price my services on the transformation and not just your standard PT session. So I was charging a little bit more than the average PT in my town because I recognize the value of a transformation versus just selling pay-as-you-go on
Mhm.
blocks of 10. So I really understood the power of that. And once you got some success, that people wouldn't argue with your price. If you went through that process I mentioned earlier, the 10-minute call, pre-qualification, and then the in-depth call. So yeah, that's kind of how I would recommend a trainer does it, and not get sucked into you got to earn 10K. Just think about what you're earning now. Maybe you want to earn more, but can you at least get to that level? And if you're earning six figures, then you've probably got a lot of the skills that are required to maybe earn six figures, possibly. You might have marketing and sales already. So you can do a lot better than somebody who has got no sales or marketing skills, you know?
For sure. And determining the lifestyle you want to lead as well. There's, if you want to have that time to spend coaching your son tennis, then obviously there's a time investment in that, and you're capping what your earning potential could potentially be.
Yeah.
If you're happy with that, great.
Yeah.
There's nothing to say that that's wrong because it isn't. That's
Yeah.
right for you.
Yeah.
But then equally, those who want a world domination, yeah, go ahead and do that, and
Yeah.
again, and find the way and the steps you need to do to achieve that.
Cool.
But no, it's great.
Yeah. No, brilliant. Yeah.
Um, that's fantastic. I think you've covered some elements. I'm thinking as well in terms of pricing.
Hmm.
What's your take on? Because I've come across this situation numerous times. I did it myself. In that raising your prices. If you're seeing that the average across the board in your town or city where you are is, I don't know, 50 pounds,
Hmm.
$50, or whatever your currency of choice is,
Hmm.
raising your prices and have you come across that yourself personally? Have you struggled with making that transition and putting your prices up substantially, or with clients that you've worked with? What pushback have you had on that?
That's a good question. I'll give you two quick examples. I'll give you what I've done. I'll raise my prices, but I'll give you another example, which I think is not the way to do it.
Okay, no, I love
So
it, love it.
I'll give you that one first. So there's a trainer local to me. I won't mention his name. But he's a really good guy, and I have actually referred clients to him on numerous occasions. And he keeps promising, oh, he did when I was offline to come and do something. He never did. But anyway, that's by the by. But I saw he put out a post on Instagram, and it's about his price increase. And I'm paraphrasing a little bit because I can't remember it word for word, but it was basically this: da da da. I'm going to be increasing my prices because I've done this qualification, taken this qualification, done this, done this, done this. And as I'm reading it, I'm thinking, is this a spoof? Is there going to be like a thing at the end that's like April Fool or something of that nature? But he was basically saying, because I've invested more in my training, I'm going to be charging you more money. And I just thought, that doesn't sit with me. I think if you can show that you've got significant results with people and you're getting even better results, I think that's justification for increasing your prices if you want to do it in that way. But to say I've done more qualifications, because clients do not care.
No, they do not.
You know what? I've taught Pilates and personal training over my career. I've never once been asked, I don't think, about my personal training qualifications. Pilates I have, because I think you're dealing with people with back problems and people are very sensitive about the backs. Personal training, no one's ever asked about my qualifications. They don't, I don't think they care. I think they understand personal training. I think they come to you, they've got a perception that a PT is going to get them fit, going to help them lose weight, going to get them toned. We own that real estate in their head, a bit like
Mhm.
Volvo cars own safe cars, a bit like
Yep.
physiotherapists own look after your back, or chiropractors own back care or manipulations. So that was one example, a bad example of raising price. How I did it, I was working when I started out, like most trainers, doing hour-long sessions, standard 60 minutes. Everybody's 60
Yep.
minutes, 60 minutes. I thought, you know what, I'm going to make a change here and I want to see if this is going to work. So I said, okay, I'm dropping all my sessions down to half an hour. I'm going to focus on resistance training. So when you come to me, you do a quick cardio warm up, and then we hit the weights and the walking, the cycling, all that jazz. Do it on your own time. I can't remember the exact figures, Andrew, so forgive me if I'm slightly out with this. But let's
Mhm.
say for a 3 month program, if I were to say to clients, or break that down to per session, so let's say somebody's coming twice a week for 3 months, and I was to break it down per session, we never did that. We always charge monthly or upfront. But if I was to break it
Yeah.
down per session, I think it was about 45 or 49 pounds. That's what it had been per hour if
Mhm.
I'd broken it down. When we went to half an hour, I basically said to my clients, look, and explained the rationale about, we're going to focus on weights, we're going to, do that. Your sessions are going to come down in price, the time's going to come down, but the price will come down. I think it worked out something like 35 or 38 for that 3 month if it was per session. So
Mhm.
in their heads, they're not silly people. They knew they were paying less, but some then decided to come in more regularly. So I had people saying that we're doing one a week to two a week, two a week to three a week. So our hourly rate went from sort of 45 or whatever it was to like 39 or something. So let's call it 40 for easy maths. So we almost not quite doubled our hourly rate, but we significantly increased it. But the way I did it was I said to clients, look, you can purchase uh, what we've got at the moment. I gave them a time frame for still doing the hour stuff. You can buy lots of those up if you want for the next 3 months. And then at this point, we're changing, so you know. But for
Yeah.
anybody new that came to us, that was the price.
Yeah.
So for the existing people, they had a kind of like a period of time of transition where they could buy
Mhm.
at that old rate if they want to keep doing that. But for anybody that wanted to go across, they could do it, and it would happen in 3 months. But new people, that's what we did. So we didn't do it overnight. We gave them that period of time to make a decision. But that, towards the end of my offline career, I got down. I went from having a team and studios to just being me and really scaling it back. That was arguably some of my most profitable time in my business, where I was working just 3 days a week, one to one, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and I would have a high ticket body transformation program that I ran Monday through to Friday, and that would start early in the morning. And that's where I had clients actually training with me, doing my training, charging them high ticket, and I'm training as well. It was like, this is brilliant. I'm training, I'm getting fit, and that was for clients who knew what they were doing, by the way. It wasn't for newbies, it was people that
Of course.
I've
Yeah.
trained for a
That makes
while. I didn't
sense.
have to be watching them every second of for every movement. These are people that were experienced trainers, and that worked incredibly well. But yeah, hopefully that answers your question on price.
No,
I
it
mean,
does. I like it.
yeah, what have you done yourself for pricing?
I followed a similar process because I started out with one-to-one. I was a mobile PT and then
Mm,
realized, well, this isn't a great use of my time. I moved into running boot camps,
yeah.
and I was able to systemize them and scale them up to 6 locations. But for the personal training, I realized that, hey, I'd heard of this semi-private model from the US back in the day, and I transitioned my
Mm,
personal training clients over to that.
mm,
And it was a similar process in that anybody new coming on, that was the only option they had.
mm,
My existing client base were a couple of them were grandfathered into because they needed that more one-to-one.
yeah.
Um, Anyone else that needed one-to-one, I raised my pricing. Or for those I grandfathered in. Anyone else, I said, hey, look, I'm moving to the semi-private model. This is why I'm moving to it. I feel it's beneficial to you.
Mm,
It's beneficial to me, and plus it's going to be a lot cheaper for you as well.
yeah.
And I found that those that did it, they actually preferred it because they enjoyed having somebody else in that session with them. There was
Sure.
a rapport built with them.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
some of them actually went for coffee or whatever
Mm,
afterwards. But equally, like you mentioned, those that were coming in once a week were suddenly had they were able to afford, coming twice or maybe even three times in certain circumstances.
Yeah.
So they were benefiting on that and obviously accelerating the results that they had as well. But a strange thing when I did raise my price up, so it was probably top end within my local market,
Yeah.
that gave the perception that I was a better trainer than a lot of
Hmm.
the others in the
Yeah. Yeah.
so I was actually getting more leads coming in because hey, if you're charging that, actually I can afford that. You must be a better trainer.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think I was. It was better. I feel I was a decent
Yeah.
trainer, but there was others I feel were better qualified than me. But because the perception was, I was charging more. Well, I was charging more. The perception was I was a better coach,
Yeah.
so that drove more leads, which was interesting. So it's having that confidence, not being silly with pricing, of course, but having that confidence to put it out there and then delivering the experience that your clients expect, um, and then setting those expectations and delivering on them.
Yeah. And a final point I make on the, dropping down from an hour to half an hour sessions. I think trainers can have a fixed mindset that it has to be an hour. But for the client, for a lot of them, because remember, a lot of the people we train are not gym people like us.
No.
We've got to see them a little bit differently. A percentage will get into it. I had one client that became a fitness model, for example. Another one got a six pack. I had two or three, but not percentage wise, very, very small number of people get to that level of dedication, really small percentage. Most people, if they can get in and do half an hour, two, three times a week, and get the same outcome as somebody coming in for an hour at a time, three times a week, they'll opt for half an hour.
Mhm.
They don't want to be giving up more time. They will happily do less in terms of coming to see you if they get the same outcome. But I think sometimes as trainers, and I was guilty of this, thinking it's got to be 60 minutes.
Me too.
No, Eric, it doesn't have to be 60 minutes. Not only that, it means that they spend less time away from their home and they can get back to doing other things that are important to them. And if you can get them that result in a shorter period of time, they'll happily pay a bit more. It's a bit like someone going to an eye surgeon. I can take an hour doing it this way, or I can do laser eye surgery with the latest equipment and do it in like 2, 3 minutes. This will
Mhm.
cost you more for 2, 3 minutes, or we can take it longer and it'll cost you. Which one do you want to go? I'll pay a bit more. I want it
Yeah.
done fast. I want speed. So less time in the gym, but same results. It's always going to be more appealing to the client who's not a gym bunny. But we think we have to have them there for the hour, and we have to have the best equipment, and nothing could be further from the truth. But that's
Uh,
another video, maybe.
That's another video. It is.
Yeah,
It is indeed, and it goes in line. And I love the fact because they can do their metabolic work, their cardio work, with instead of you standing there watching them tread the treadmill or on the cycling machine or whatever the
yeah,
tool of choice is. They much prefer going out cycling with the kids or playing football in the park or whatever that activity, movement activity might be. So it's a win for everyone. I love that.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
Hey, I've certainly found value in this topic. Hope you
Good.
have, and I hope people watching have as well, because it's an important point that we make that getting those high ticket personal training rates out there without being that shark. Let's all be dolphins.
Yeah, 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 sure thing, sure thing. Um, yeah, and if people want
Brilliant.
more information, happy to help people out
Yes.
if they want. Yeah.
That was going to be my next point.
Oh
In
no,
it,
sure, yeah.
if there's a conversation to be had and they want to learn more about this topic or any topic that you can
Mm.
discuss with Eric, how can they reach you?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there should be a link below in the video. Hopefully, that will take them to some free training, which will teach them how to create, market, and successfully sell their own high ticket program. It's available now, but it won't be available forever. That's not like a sales. That's not like a scarcity sales tactic. I'm genuinely saying that because that training is going to become part of my accelerator training that I offer trainers, the 1 day accelerator training, because it fits in quite nicely and it really is, in my opinion, something I could potentially charge people for. So it's free at the moment. So if the link's there, definitely grab it. If not, go to personaltrainercareer.co.uk again. Should be a link in the
We'll put the
description
links
below,
in there.
and we can go from there.
Fantastic. Hey, well, look, it's always a pleasure talking. I could sit here talking for hours with you, but I'm appreciative of both
Likewise,
our time.
likewise. Yeah.
And so we'll have another session real soon. But thanks for your time today, Erik.
Great, Andrew. Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Bye for now.